McLaren could sabotage themselves if they don't sort out their issues. James Vowles is under fire for blasting Mick, and Max sends a warning to Red Bull after the horrible performance. Do consider subscribing to the channel. Now let's get straight into the latest F1 news. An apologetic approach reportedly did not save James Vowles from Corinna Schumacher's wrath following his Mick Schumacher not special comment. After Williams made the call to axe Logan Sargent mid-season, Mercedes reserve Mick Schumacher cropped up as a candidate for Williams to install alongside Alex Albon for the remainder of F1 2024. But the team would go with one of their own, promoting Academy star Franco Colapinto from Formula 2. And Williams team boss James Vowles would cause a stir when discussing the choice to overlook Mick, claiming he isn't special and would just be good. That later led to an apology from Vowles and clarification on what he truly meant by his very blunt comment. But it would seem Vowles was unable to talk his way out of an awkward encounter with Mick's mother, Corinna Schumacher, who allegedly made her thoughts quite clear as Vowles left the Monza circuit on Friday evening. Respected F1 correspondent Chris Medland, in reference to Vowles' explanation, wrote for Motorsport. That didn't stop Corinna Schumacher making her feelings to Vowles, known as the Williams team principal, left the track on Friday, in a quite public setting outside the paddock as well. As for what Vowles had been trying to say with his eye-catching Mick comment, his use of the word special was in comparison to an Ayrton Senna or Lewis Hamilton kind of F1 talent. What really came across is me using the word special in context of Mick, and I really want to clarify that, the Williams team boss told F1 TV. First and foremost, I'm not here to put Mick down. Mick is in a World Championship team, Mercedes, that has chosen him as a reserve driver, and there's good reason behind it. It's because he's an incredibly strong candidate. The word special, I used it in the context of multiple world champions, like Ayrton Senna and Lewis as well. Clearly, that's a foolish thing to do because that's the comparison. Here's where Mick is. He's had a tough run of it. He has made some exceptional progress and he's in a very strong team around him. Our decision is based on the fact that we want to go with our academy and our drivers. I've apologized to Mick as well. He didn't request anything, but it's important to me because he's incredibly close to me and it just came off entirely the wrong way. More than anything else, I wanted that to be abundantly clear. Don't doubt his abilities, but we as Williams have to go with our academy, and it's what we're doing. Williams Sargent replacement Colapinto enjoyed a smooth debut at Monza, crossing the line P12, while Albon picked up 2 points with a P9 finish, taking Williams' F1 2024 tally so far to 6. Mercedes' trackside engineering director Andrew Shovlin can understand the frustrations of Lewis Hamilton, with data revealing how a pole position challenge at Monza collapsed. Qualifying has not always served as a highlight of the F1 2024 season for Hamilton, who finds himself 12-4 down to teammate George Russell, though the Italian GP drew a particularly strong response from a furious Hamilton as he was consigned to P6 on the grid. The battle for pole position was incredibly tight, with less than 2/10 ultimately splitting Lando Norris on pole and Hamilton in P6, who told Sky F1 that he was furious, absolutely furious, because I could have been pole. And the data supports that claim, Shovlin revealing that Hamilton was in the hunt for pole, but at the final corner, those chances went up in smoke. Asked, as part of Mercedes' Italian GP debrief, whether Hamilton's frustrations meant a little bit of pace was left out there, Shovlin replied, "I'm sure we could have done a bit better." And the root of Lewis's frustrations is evident when you look at the GPS data to see that going into that final corner, we were within 0.5 of Lando and his pole position lap. But then the last corner for Lewis didn't work out particularly well. He lost a bit of time there, and had it not been for that, he could have easily been on the front row if not challenging for pole. Now, not a dissimilar story with George as well. He was going pretty close going into that final corner. It was a bit better for him, and that earned him the P3 position. But what we've seen in the recent races is that fights for the front of the grid is actually extending all the way down to P7, P8. You can get so many cars there within 0.2 of a second, and that's the sort of margin where it really comes down to whether the drivers put that lap together. And frustratingly for Lewis, he'd shown great pace in Q2, didn't quite get it right for that final run in Q3, and you can drop all the way down to P6. It's just how tight it is at the moment. Hamilton would improve to P5 come the Italian Grand Prix checkered flag on Sunday, with Russell finishing P7. Max Verstappen does not want more downforce added to the Red Bull RB20 during the F1 2024 season if it makes the car difficult to drive. That's according to Red Bull advisor Helmut Marko, who has admitted the team have to rebuild after their mid-season slump continued at the Italian Grand Prix. Having produced the most successful season in history in 2023, winning all but one race as Verstappen eased to a third consecutive world championship, Red Bull had been expected to dominate once again in F1 2024. Yet despite starting the season with 4 wins from the first 5 races, Red Bull have increasingly struggled in the face of a renewed threat from the likes of McLaren, Mercedes, and Ferrari. Verstappen remains without a victory since the Spanish Grand Prix on June 23rd, a 6-race winless streak, his longest drought since 2020, with the Dutchman's lead over Lando Norris reduced to 62 points with 8 races remaining. Red Bull, meanwhile, sit just 8 points ahead of McLaren and could lose the lead of the Constructors' Championship for the first time since May 2022 at next weekend's Azerbaijan Grand Prix in Baku. Verstappen has aired concerns that his title is in jeopardy, telling media including PlanetF1.com at Monza that winning both championships is not realistic for Red Bull on current form. Referring to the RB20 as a monster, Verstappen went on to declare that Red Bull must turn the car upside down after making it undrivable in the space of just 6 months. Since F1's ground effect regulations were introduced in 2022, teams have faced the challenge of adding the downforce to the car while keeping it in a user-friendly window, with a trade-off to be found between improving the car's overall performance and retaining drivability. Writing in his post-race Speed Week column, Marko revealed that Verstappen has made clear his preference to Red Bull's engineers over the Italian GP weekend, insisting he would rather have a more compliant car with less downforce. Marko said, "The main question now is, how do we go about rediscovering the good car balance from the first part of the season?" Max Verstappen said in Monza that he doesn't need 20 points more downforce if it makes the car undrivable, so we have to rebuild and hopefully find the point at which the car was in balance. If we can do that, then the behavior of the car will become predictable again. The drivers will gain fresh confidence and will be able to contribute in an ideal way again. Of course, this is a difficult task because we've put a lot of new parts on the car since then. Put simply, we have to find out where we went wrong technically. Marko's comments come after Swiss-German publication Blick claimed Red Bull have all but conceded the constructors' title to McLaren, with the team's focus on securing a 4th consecutive world championship for Verstappen. A report quotes the unnamed member of Red Bull's senior management commenting before the race at Monza, "We can forget about this championship. All that counts now is Max's 4th title." Marko appeared to echo that view, telling Austria's OE24 that the Drivers' Championship is the priority for Red Bull. Nico Rosberg joked that Sky F1's Natalie Pinkham was quite horrible for bringing up the worst memory of his time as Lewis Hamilton's Mercedes teammate. Rosberg retired 5 days after being crowned world champion in 2016, having prevailed against Hamilton in a tense season finale in Abu Dhabi. The German's success came after 2 punishing defeats to his Mercedes teammate in 2014 to 15, with Hamilton claiming 21 race victories compared to Rosberg's 11 across the first 2 seasons of F1's V6 hybrid era. A new inter-team rivalry currently appears to be brewing at McLaren, where the relationship between Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri has become more intense now the pair are competing for regular victories. Norris threatened to defy McLaren team orders during July's Hungarian Grand Prix, only following the team's requests to swap positions with Piastri in the closing stages as the Australian collected his maiden victory. Piastri went on to launch an aggressive overtake around the outside of Norris at the start of last weekend's Italian Grand Prix. The move was considered to be within the framework of McLaren's so-called papaya rules, under which Norris and Piastri are free to race as long as they do not make contact. McLaren opted against enforcing strict team orders at Monza, even though Norris's title rival Max Verstappen started a distant 7th, with the pair now separated 62 points with 8 races remaining. Team principal Andrea Stella hinted McLaren may reassess their rules of engagement from next weekend's Azerbaijan Grand Prix, telling media, including PlanetF1.com, that the team want to give it a go and try to secure the Drivers' Championship with Norris. Appearing on the Sky F1 podcast, Rosberg believes it would be a hard ask to convince Piastri to potentially give up victories to assist his teammate's title charge without a contractual obligation to support Norris. He said, "It's hard on Oscar because in his contract, Oscar will have a #1 contract. It won't say in his contract that he needs to help Lando. And Oscar is driving brilliantly also, so he actually deserves every opportunity, from his point of view, to get race wins. Plus, let's also remember mathematically he can still be world champion. There's also that. He's not that far behind Lando. He's 44 points behind Lando, so he's not that far behind Verstappen either. So it's a hard ask on Oscar to start forfeiting race wins potentially." Referring to Rosberg's own experience alongside Hamilton at Mercedes, Pinkham laughed, "Absolutely. You don't want to see your teammate win a world championship in a car that you knew you could potentially have won it in as well. That's gotta be the worst." Rosberg replied, "Yes, Natalie, that is the worst. That was actually quite horrible, Natalie." Rosberg's comments come after Martin Brundle claimed Piastri does not care about Norris's title hopes, and he argued that Piastri may not have swapped positions with his teammate in Hungary had their positions been reversed, suggesting the Australian has a more uncompromising attitude than Norris. Writing in his post-race Sky F1 column, Brundle said, "Piastri clearly has no interest in Norris's world championship chances against Max Verstappen, which we'd already witnessed in Hungary when he firmly seized the lead in the first corner. The racer in me admires this attitude. That's why Piastri won championships and ended up in a race-winning F1 car. The last thing which will excite him is Norris becoming world champion in the same car. That doesn't mean he won't help out at some point, and indeed that he hasn't helped out here and there already. But that racer's mentality and killer instinct is all important. I remember saying in commentary in Hungary, if the roles had been reversed, would Piastri have handed Norris the lead back, and I really don't know the answer. I do know that many ruthless and selfish world champions I've raced against wouldn't have." Banging his steering wheel in Monza before declaring both titles are not realistic, David Coulthard says Max Verstappen has just cause to be concerned, having not won any of the last 6 races. Verstappen and Red Bull had a troubled weekend at the Italian Grand Prix, where the reigning world champion was almost 7/10 of a second shy of pole position before bringing his RB20 home in 6th place. Still the better of the 2 Red Bull drivers, Helmut Marko claimed the talent can no longer drive around the RB20's balance issues, which have been exacerbated by recent upgrades. A notable misstep in Hungary forced the team to dial back on their upgrades with Red Bull now in a race to figure out exactly where they went wrong. But while Marko says they made a breakthrough on Saturday that allowed them to take a decision on how to move forward, today the team is facing the loss of the Constructors' Championship and perhaps even the drivers. McLaren recorded a double podium at Monza to close the gap to Red Bull to 8 points, while Lando Norris's P3 means he's 62 points behind Verstappen, and Verstappen is worried. At the moment, both championships are not realistic, he told the media, including PlanetF1.com at Monza. Coulthard says he has every right to be worried. He should be concerned, he told Channel 4 after the race. I think the whole team are concerned. They haven't built on the upgrades. Unlike McLaren, who have found performance, they haven't moved forward. They need to unlock the performance in that car. Right now, he's on a losing streak that's going to be very difficult to turn around unless they come up with something that really ignites that car's performance. He added, "They're definitely not as hot as they were. The lap time doesn't lie. They're on the back foot. The upgrades haven't worked, and they're no longer the benchmark in terms of outright performance. They know that. They can't hide from it. They have a group of people that designed and built a brilliant race car last year, a car that's won 7 races already this year, but their upgrades are not working. They need to find something in the coming days." While McLaren have nailed their upgrades this season, putting a heavily revised car on the track in Miami and winning their first of 4 races this season, Red Bull's big update in Hungary created balance issues with the RB20. It led to a notably frustrated Verstappen finishing P5 that day as he ranted on the radio. That was evident again in Monza as he raced to 6th place with a slow pit stop and an engine issue leading to him telling Red Bull to wake up, even if their shot performance meant a lowly result. Coulthard said of that, "Look, we know that he's feisty. We know he's got a lot of passion. Of course, the upside is when you're winning, everybody loves you. When things are not going well, that raw passion comes through again. They can control it, there's no question about it, but they need to unlock some potential in that car. The upgrades haven't worked, but it's still within the capability. they've still won 7 Grand Prix this year. Amidst the intensifying championship fight behind Red Bull, McLaren, and Ferrari, the midfield battle has become somewhat overlooked. Specifically, VCARB's poor development has gone under the radar. However, the Faenza team's decline is relevant, especially as Daniel Ricciardo and Yuki Tsunoda fight for a promotion. For the first time since the opening 2 rounds, VCARB has failed to score points in consecutive races. As Williams, Haas, and even Alpine take steps forward, the Racing Bulls are stagnant. The team did comparison work between their drivers at the Italian GP. Tsunoda ran the latest upgrades, whilst Ricciardo used the old spec car. Tsunoda's feedback about the updates was extremely negative, with VCARB and even Helmut Marko confirming the new package failed to generate improvements. This also has implications for Daniel Ricciardo, who finds himself in increasingly mediocre machinery. Several factors will determine Red Bull's future plans with the Australian. However, having a car capable of points could be what tips the scale for Ricciardo, especially as Red Bull formulate their plans for 2025. I appreciate that I don't know if I've got 1 year left, 5 years left, so I'm treating it like it's my last chance, he told Goodwood. So I'm in a good place because I'm comfortable within myself, and I'm comfortable with the approach I'm taking and going all in. When asked about the possibility of becoming teammates with Max Verstappen for the second time, Ricciardo gave a candid response. Yeah, I'm not going to give a diplomatic answer. Of course I would. I know I need to mean it. It's not just going to be handed to me, but if I earned it and the chance was there, of course, I'd love to do it. So we'll see. Liam Lawson's future is now a common part of the F1 news cycle. The Kiwi is expected to join the grid with VCARB next year, but Red Bull are still evaluating their options. Red Bull could make any number of decisions: Sergio Perez, Yuki Tsunoda, and Daniel Ricciardo's future. However, the expectation is that at least one of these teams will make way for Lawson next year. Considering Tsunoda's consistently strong contributions at VCARB, not to mention his contract, his place on next year's grid seems relatively safe. Therefore, it becomes Daniel Ricciardo and Sergio Perez who will compete to stay in the Red Bull setup. Time will tell which driver emerges victorious. Thanks for watching the video. I'll see you around.